We have 2 more at 7, 8, yeah.
Okay.
How's it going, everybody? Cameron and Todd back again with, let's see, what do we got? What are we talking about today? Dashes for our drag racing vehicles, hooking them up to any sort of our data loggers, V300, V500, even G2X Pro if you wanted to, for any of the road race stuff, but we're going to mostly talk about the drag racing stuff today.
Right, and the Sportsman.
And the Sportsman.
Yeah, so you have your choice of basically two basic dash choices. Our old faithful UDX dash, which has been around since the early 2000s, was one of the very first VNet capable dashes ever built. So this is the one that we see primarily in drag racing. Mm-hmm. This was where it started. Even though it's 15 years old as far as the design goes, still very popular. I don't know, did you have it in one of your cars?
I still have it in my Supercomp car, the UDX, and we'll get to, I guess, why I have that in there versus the IQ3 in a minute. But yeah, it's a great unit. I love it. I can see it really well. There's a lot of cool features with it, and it eliminates the Swiss cheese look in your dash for all the analog gauges, and it's really easy to program and set up, and the wiring part of it aspect, because it's all done through VNet, so a lot of this stuff is super easy to program. We'll talk about it in a second, but it's literally just one wire.
Right.
So
right, both dashes we're going to cover today, the IQ3 and the UDX, both come with a 36-inch T cable, which plugs into the VNet, into your VNet system, and contrary to popular belief, that's actually all that's required to power these things up. Now, they do come with additional wires, which we'll get into, as Cameron had said, to operate shift lights and certain other functions within them. But that's all you need is the 36-inch T cable. Plugs right in, provides power, provides all the information to the dash. So if for it to transfer engine RPM, oil pressure, if you've got it installed, any of those items all come through that one connection. So, But let's start with our typical. At this point in time, everyone should know what to expect.
Yeah.
It's the What's in the Box section. So that segment of our show, as usual, we've got the video help. We actually have in this, we have a mounting template that comes with it, and that is a 1-to-1 scale. So those of you looking to make make the cuts in your dash to get this mounted, that template can be used. So it shows the mounting holes.
The cool thing about the template is, obviously, it kind of shows a lot of guys. You'll see what the back is, but all you're really cutting out is 2 little holes for the whole thing. You're not cutting this big gaping hole through your nice carbon fiber dash or anything. It's just 2 little decent sized holes, and off you go.
Right. So I'll bring out now the actual dash itself, and just to expand on what Cameron was talking about. So these are the actual cuts that are required. So these actually contain some of the electronics for the unit. So that's why it sets in a little bit deeper when you actually mount it in your vehicle. So that's why those cutouts are in place for you, so that those will go ahead and give you sufficient clearance to make that work. Mm-hmm. Now, also included in the kit, you'll see that there'll be some wires. Again, these aren't necessarily required. These are optional, so if you wanted to operate an external warning or shift light, because the function of the UDX, basically the 6 lights on the side here all flash red.
Apparently the Hells Angels just rode
I
by.
was just going to say, the Harley Owners Group is having a meeting nearby. So anyhow, all 6 lights on the side here work as dual function shift light or warning lights. So if you don't want to use those, or you want to use an external light that's more in your field of vision for a shift light or for a warning light, this kit here of wires and connectors will offer you that opportunity.
Yep.
What else do we have in there, Cameron?
The T cable.
The aforementioned 36-inch T cable.
Yep. And that's what's really cool about these units. When you plug it in, it's literally you have 1 port on here, and this T cable just plugs right into the back, and then that just ties into the rest of your stuff there, and you don't have to do any cutting, crimping, anything like that. It's just literally plug and play.
Right. And as I'd mentioned, this other wiring, since we're looking at the back side of the dash, the connector and the shift light, warning light, external pins, those connect onto this. We have a port A and a port B. All this is contained in the manual, which we'll get to in just a second, but you can see that's where that connection is. Again, not required. The only thing that is required to make it function is the VNet T cable to get it into the VNet system.
Mm-hmm. And see, basically there's only a couple other things in here. You have an extra connector for if you're probably not going to use this. This is being used if you're running this thing as a standalone unit without any data logger or anything like that, which most of the time you're not going to do with a UDX. So
No, yeah,
this is kind of extra.
Yeah, and that is a question that we get a lot because there are a variety of flavors, if you will, of the UDX. We have a street rod version of it. We have a replay dash version of it. We have a logger dash version of it. Just like the IQ3, very versatile. The UDX display dash only, however, must be used with a data logger of some type, a Sportsman, a V300. It does not have the capabilities of running as a standalone, which is something we'll cover with the IQ3 later on. So.
Right, and one thing to note, like Todd was saying, all of our dashes look almost exactly the same, but all the part numbers are different. So what's going to happen is on the back of the dash, you have the actual part number. Most all of them will start with 250DS and then UDX and then something. So this being a display-only dash, it's just a UDX, which means it's a display-only. It has to plug into a data logger to function. If it was like a replay or something like that, like a LDX, it would say UDX LDX or UDX RP for replay, right, etc. So, and then the serial number, most all of these are 501. It's just our coding, and then whatever revision firmware you have in it. But yeah, keep in mind the part number is always on the back on a sticker. Don't remove that, because if you ever had any questions in the future and you called the tech guys, they're going to ask you what type of dash you have and say, is it a display only or whatever, and a lot of people can't remember, so just look at the part number, give them the part number, and they'll know. But pretty much the only thing else in the bag is the software, like Todd talked about, and like all of our segments. There's just a little USB thumb drive in here that houses all of our manuals for a ton of our products and the software itself, if you would like to use that. So, but other than that, it's pretty basic, and what we can do is we can get into a little bit of the functions of the dash itself now that we've kind of gone through the box. And with it being a display only version, and there's really not much stuff to it, so
right. So one of the things that comes up is, especially when we're dealing with a unit like the Sportsman, is will a display take up a channel? Anybody that's running a couple of O2s, and we've covered this in our Sportsman segment a few weeks ago, that unit from the factory is limited to 6 channels. So no, the IQ3 or the UDX dash, neither one will use up any channels per se, even though when you read it in, it's reading all the information on the VNets just like any other sensor data. So once it's plugged into the VNet, it's able to transmit all of that information that's coming through as a display. Doesn't use up any channels, like I said. All of these items that are functioning on our CAN bus system, which we refer to as VNet, just devices on the same line. So it can get plugged in any order, just like the VNet sensors. Some people have this plugged in, at the very end of their VNet chain and have a terminator cap at the end of the T cable, or they'll have them midway. They'll still have EGTs
right,
and things like that to get over to the driver's side of the vehicle, so on and so forth. So that's just one of the things, because a lot of people are hesitant to add a dash to a Sportsman or anything like that because they figure it will use up a channel. So
yeah, I mean, so making it so universal, it's a lot easier to put into a door car, a dragster, or whatever. And we make different lengths of T cables. We make different lengths of extension cables. A lot of guys put the data logger in front of the dragster itself, and then all of a sudden you have the dash in the middle, and then the rest of your sensors in the back. So instead of buying one really long cable, you just buy two shorter ones. So and tee it into the middle. So, but the cool thing about the UDX display only dash is it can pretty much work with any of our data loggers. So really popular data logger that we use this with a bunch is the Sportsman Datalogger or the V300 Datalogger. Those are pretty much the most popular ones in our arsenal of data loggers here at Racepak, and it's any of our data loggers you can use it, but those are kind of two of the populars. The V500 SD. The only thing that you cannot use any of our VNet, should we say VNet dashes with, would be a Pro system like a Pro 3 or anything like that. But for the most people that are watching this is they're probably not racing Top Fuel or Funny Car, but
right. The Pro,
except Todd.
Or Cameron. So, just to touch on that, we've talked just very lightly on the Pro 3 and the Pro 3A series that's available for the fuel cars. They would use what's called the Pro Dash. which I just came in from running the CNC back there. We're milling new housings as this is going on. So, but yeah, the Pro Dash is available for use on the Pro 3, the Pro 3A, which is used for the alcohol dragsters and funny cars, and then the Pro 3A Nostalgia Kit, which we had somebody, I think one of the last webinars was saying, what type of system do I need for my Nostalgia funny car? We actually make a special Pro 3A already set with the requirements for a Nostalgia funny car or top fuel setup, but we have that as a kit, and you can add the optional Pro Dash to that.
Yep, cool. Well, let's do this. Let's tear open the box of the IQ3, and then we'll both set them here, and then we'll kind of talk about some of the little differences between the two and pricing and whatnot. So I'll move this over here for now.
Okay, yeah, let's not get them confused for the time being. So the IQ3, again,
and real quick,
what do we got?
Josh, you have a Elite 2500 ECU. Was wondering which display would be good for a street dash. These dashes are not street dashes. You'd probably want to look at our IQ3 street version, which looks a lot like what we're going to talk about right now, but it's completely different on the inside. It's built for a street car with turn signal indicators, high beam indicator, all that good stuff for the road, oil, water, and you can add, depending on what ECU you have, you can add it to look at all of your functions from your ECU as well. But that'll be covered in another webinar as well. But
well, if we think, yeah, and again, feel free to add your questions as we go along here. If that's something you'd like us to do, a specific street-only version of these dashes, we'd be more than happy to go through that, because we know that there's an awful lot of these Racepak products that have kind of come to life on the drag strips and the road courses around the country, and now find an application back in the street. As we'd mentioned, we have a street version of the UDX that does have turn signals and everything in it, and as Cameron just mentioned, our popular IQ3 just late 2015 we came out with a street version of it, and it's proven to be wildly popular. So let's get on with that. So the IQ3 display has a smaller footprint than its brother there, the UDX. So the main difference, and when I'm talking to customers that aren't familiar with which dash they have, like Cameron says, without looking at the serial number on the back of it, or the actual part number on the back of it, I just ask them, do you have the rectangular dash, or do you have the one that's slightly curved? This dash here was kind of designed more with the road racer in mind, to fit a smaller cockpit, but it obviously very quickly found a home with dragsters.
Yeah, the dragster stuff.
Yeah. So, but anyhow, so that's the first thing that pops out there. Again, just like the UDX, comes with its 36-inch T cable, and then also comes with a red wire, which I'll just touch on briefly. Very rarely is this required. Again, because we'd said that the unit gets all its power and all its information necessary from the VNet 36-inch T cable. But unlike the UDX, this unit can be used as a standalone. So it can be used without a data logger. Some people will just go ahead and start plugging in certain VNet channels, like they'll plug in a VNet oil pressure or water temp and an engine RPM module and give themselves basic instrumentation. In that case, they can either power up again through the VNet, or they can provide standalone power using the red wire that comes with.
A lot of guys use the red wire if they're using some sort of EFI system, like they're using one of our EFI interfaces. So say if you had a big stuff, or a Holly, or I think we interface with like 25 or 30 different EFI systems now, and
the list is growing.
Yes, daily. So you plug that module in, and then a lot of guys, they just want to see their EFI stuff. They don't care about anything else. So that's what that wire's for.
Right, so. and that wire gets placed in. It's the information is actually contained in the quick start guide that comes with the kit, but it plugs into the back where we have this 8-pin Deutsch connector. So we've got that plugs in on the back side of the dash right here. So it's not populated by default, because like I said, it's not typically used. Most people will go ahead and use this in a VNet style application as opposed to a standalone, but we provide this harness and that power wire just in case you do want to use it as a separate unit.
Exactly.
Also along with it, the mounting studs, which fit into the back side of it, so you can see, I don't know if you've got a static shot of it or anything that shows it, but there's 3 mounting positions in the back where the studs go, make it very easy and very quick to mount. You can see, unlike the UDX, has a much smaller area that needs to be cut out in the dash.
Yep.
our famous programming cable. So we've talked about this before in some of the other webinars. So just like the Sportsman that we had talked about and the V300 SD, this unit communicates using the 3.5 millimeter programming cable like a headphone jack. So that just plugs in the back here. Again, this is only if you're in a standalone situation. If you're using it with a data logger, then don't bother programming the dash separately. Read it in just as you would any other sensor on the system, and make all your changes in your V300 or in your Sportsman configuration file.
Yeah, if you're a drag racer, you're probably not going to end up using this. You can use it on your data logger, I guess.
I would always keep it as a spare for your V300 or your Sportsman, because those things have a tendency to walk.
Yeah, when you plug it in, you're not going to technically use that because you probably already have one for your V300, your Sportsman, V500. So, but we include that in there because a lot of guys, like we talked about, use the EFI stuff and they need some way to program it. So
right, and along those lines, that's also why it gets its own copy of the software. And again, the user manuals, everything is contained on this. So this is very important. It's only in a blue bag, not like the red bag, like the license disc, but still just as important. Please hang on to that. So
absolutely.
So that's what comes in the kit for the IQ3 as well. So let's go ahead and put those two side by side. We can kind of get a little bit of a comparison going, and then if anyone has any questions about the capabilities or differences between one or the other. One of the things that we discussed very lightly is that both these dashes, certainly the UDX we mentioned that has a shift light built in, which uses the 6 lights, 3 on either side. The IQ3, because it was designed more as a road racing style dash, has what we call a progressive shift light. Starts green, yellow, goes to red, all the way up. And in drag racing mode, obviously, we try to narrow that up because it's shift now. In road racing and things like that, we kind of broaden it up so that it makes it easier for them to anticipate the shift. Another thing. Sorry if I'm talking.
No, you're fine. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But another thing that's coming up on IQ3 is, again, because it was designed for road racing, there's a large center digit, which can only be a single digit, and it was designed to be a gear indicator. So obviously in drag racing that's not of very much use. So in a drag racing application that will be left blank. So you'll have a little area about 1 inch by about 1.5 inches, which, you know, if you're monitoring something, somebody was looking at something the other day that was only going to read 0 to 5. I said that's a perfect spot for it.
There you go.
But it can only be that. So typically there's no use for that in a drag racing application.
Yep. We could talk about the size differences. Basically, they relatively the same size as far as height. The IQ3 itself is about 4.5 inches tall. The UDX is about 4 inches tall. Obviously, as you can see, the UDX is a bit wider. It's about 10 inches long versus 7.4 inches long. And like I mentioned, I said I'd get to why I use the UDX in my personal car over the IQ3 is just because everything's spread out a little bit more. I can see it better. That way, you know, when I glance down at it, it's not as compact. Some people like the compactness. Some people don't. I prefer to have everything spread out a little bit more, so that way I can see it when I'm just glancing down at it. And the font is a tad bigger, not much, but I mean we're talking minute stuff there. But yeah, as far as the differences in the displays, as far as height and width, weight-wise, they're about the same. The IQ3 might be a couple ounces lighter, but we're not talking, oh my gosh, this one's 10 pounds and this one's 5 pounds or anything like that. Let's see, as far as what's another commonality that...
Well, they both have a backlight. The UDX backlight is more of a greenish hue, and the IQ3 has a bold blue backlight. Both of them you can set the backlight intensities, so if it's a little overpowering, especially in the evening when you're making some of those nighttime runs, not that anyone ever gets delayed enough at a drag race where they have to run late at night. So you can dial back the intensity on the backlights. Another thing, because again the UDX was designed, as I said, well over a decade ago, it has some preset channel tags already in it. So we have certain things like this can only read RPM or mile per hour. There's
oil.
Certain fields, oil, water, EGT 1, 2, 3. One of the things when we designed the IQ3 back in 2007, I guess it's its 10-year anniversary coming up.
There you go.
But we had the ability to create our own custom channel tags in there, so you can do 5 characters. So you can have oil wherever you decide it needs to say oil P or something for oil pressure, or H2OT or whatever you want it to be for water temp, RPM, things of that nature. So we've had some people get pretty creative, and fortunately not a lot of profanity.
Yeah, we actually had somebody say that they asked their potential wife to marry them. That said, "Will you marry me?" in there, and she went to turn on the car to go drive it somewhere, and it said, "Will you marry me?" And apparently she said yes. So we
need to follow up with them. If they're still married.
We're making love connections here at Racepak also. So let's see, what else did you talked about? A lot of people ask, what's this little deal right here on the top of the IQ3? We use the same housing for, like we've talked about, there's like 7 different models of the IQ3. This same housing is used on our logging dash version and our drag dash versions that have the micro SD card that we talked about a few weeks before. So when it's a display only version, it's just kind of blocked out, and it has a little cover over it, so that way you don't worry about sticking anything in there to get it stuck in the board or anything like that. Let's see, standalone wise, like I said, if you're looking to do something standalone, EFI or anything like that, and kind of getting away from the drag racing stuff, I would recommend the IQ3 because it's a lot easier to program, things like that. Can you do it with the UDX? Yes, but it's not really recommended because there's a lot more programming involved, and it's something we don't want you to really do. If you're going to do that, you'd want to go with like a street dash or a replay dash or something like that.
Right. Again, because the UDX display itself cannot work on its own, so it definitely needs either a data logger with it, or it needs to be one of those other varieties that you mentioned, the street rod or the replay or the logger dash. So this unit cannot be a standalone. The IQ3 can be. Right. It has the ability to run as its own device in that regard.
You can make it work there. So let's see. Let's talk about the studs. We have, a lot of times they come installed or they don't come installed, like on the IQ3. The studs themselves, they just need to finger tight in there. You don't need to get out a torque wrench or anything like that. We've actually get dashes back all the time where people actually try to torque these little studs into the back of the dash, which then breaks the plastic and screws it into the board, which then causes it not to power on, or it'll like wipe out all the segments in the dash or something, and it'll power on, but it just is shorted out and won't work because it hit the board and something shorted. So just finger tight on the studs, and then you can snug up the little nut, on your backing plate or whatever, however you're having it mounted.
Yeah, they come with lock washers, so they're not going to back out. I'm yet to see one come back. Even the worst Pro Mod that went out and rattled the tires, I have not seen the dash come hanging out.
Yeah, it's
one of the things I would like to mention, though, is since we're talking about the mounting, is here at Racepak we actually do provide mount panels for both the UDX and the IQ3. We may have discussed that with the IQ3 drag dash back a few weeks ago. But so we have a carbon fiber, a fake brushed aluminum, and then just a standard black plastic available for either one, and that eliminates a lot of the cutting that we were talking about. So you don't even have to worry about the template. It's usually just a trim to fit, so that it fits within your dash. So you just trim off the outer edges.
Yeah, it comes in like a rectangle, and you just cut it to whatever, if you're putting it in like a door car or a Camaro or something, and you just want it to sit over where your gauges were, you just trace it out and cut it, and the IQ3 would kind of sit in the middle. So, and it has enough meat on it too. If you're running like some special gauge or something that you need in there as well, there's enough room to kind of add a few things on the sides of them as well. Let's see, what's another common thing that a lot of people talk about? You talk about the warning lights. The IQ3, they have 4 built-in warning lights that you can program. All this stuff that we talk about is all done through, I know Todd mentioned it before, is done through the config file for your data logger. So your Sportsman, V300, V500, anything that needs to be programmed is done through that. So your warning lights, your progressive shift lights, if you want them all to turn on at the same time, if it's super bright, if you want your oil pressure to be at 19 psi, whatever, that's all done through the config file. Actually, next week and the week after our last 2 webinars, we're going to talk about actually how to program the IQ3. I believe is next week, and the UDX is the last one. So to kind of get you and show you a little bit on how to actually do that. But that's all done through the data logger. But yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else that causes the difference here. See if we have any.
When I'm talking to customers when they're setting up for a brand new system, it's usually just a matter of personal preference. Like we said, this one was designed, the UDX was designed as a drag racing style dash. The digital readout for engine RPM is slightly larger, whereas the IQ3 has a slightly smaller display for it. So
we had a question from the back panel here that a lot of people think that the dash is per se the master. Well, the data logger itself, Sportsman V300, V500, that is the brains of the operation. The display-only dashes are the slave. So whatever you program in the data logger is going to display on the dash. It's dumb, so it only does what the data logger tells you to do. So now the IQ3, when you're running it standalone, that we keep talking about, that is when the dash itself becomes the brain per se, because there's no data logger telling it to go anywhere else. So that's when that becomes a brain. But when it's in a drag racing application, the data logger is the brain.
Right. So and we talked about that earlier. That the IQ3 does have the ability to directly connect the programming cable into it. But as Cameron says, if you're using this in conjunction with a drag racing data logger like a Sportsman or V300, or even, as you had said, the road racing G2X Pro, you would instead do all of your programming through the configuration file for, let's say, the V300. You would open up your car configuration. If it hadn't already been added, let's say you had added this at a later date, you would have read it in, a channel would come up that says IQ3 display, and then you right-click and you can go ahead and set up all the parameters on that. You wouldn't bother directly connecting to the unit.
Yep. Did you talk about how many things you can display and how many different pages?
I did not, Cameron. No, that's a good question. So both of these units have 4 programmable display pages. So with the IQ3, we have 3 displays across the bottom. We have, again, that large center display, which isn't used all that much in drag racing, but in road racing is certainly a good spot for gear indicator. We have also 2 other displays to the left and to the right of that, and then we have the large swept tack. So it's truly 7, 6 usable, and then, as I said, that's the ability to switch to the other 3 pages, so you can display technically 24 different items, 28 if you're including that center digit.
Yep. And then people ask all the time, well, if I program the one thing, how do I get it to the next port? Well, on the back of the Deutsch connectors of each of these, there's a wire that you can plug in any sort of momentary button on the steering wheel, in your dash, or anything. You just tap it. Once it triggers to ground, it will flash to the next page. And if you have all 4, it'll basically cycle through. It'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. There's other ways that you can program it to where if you wanted page 3 to be your default page right when you power it on, it'll start there, but 9 times out of 10 people put page 1 is page 1 and 2, 3, 4, and you just keep toggling through and it just goes in a circle. Now, if you only have 2 pages programmed and everything else is disabled in the programming, it'll just toggle back and forth to 1 and 2, which makes it really easy. You don't get confused and whatnot. But same thing with the UDX. You can do the same exact thing. You have 4 pages of inputs. It does not have that big center deal. So it's a couple less, but
no, the big center deal is the engine RPM, which is why we all like that.
Well, yeah, that too. Yeah, the big center one, people use it for either brake pressure or RPM, is really popular. But I like the swept tack across the top. A lot of guys use the swept tack across the top for brake pressure as well, and then the big digit in the middle for RPM. But same thing. You can toggle through the pages. The UDXs actually have built-in buttons. You can just push the display if you want, but you can also wire in a remote button as well. But most people just push the button because it's built in on the dash. So
it's just easiest.
Makes it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Let's see here what we have on here. If there's anything. Oh, we got John and Brian. They both have different opinions, but they both think they're great. That's really cool. And Larry likes his IQ3 too. So very cool. So thank you, Josh. That's awfully nice of you. So, but yeah, I mean, the display only versions are pretty basic units. So it's, as far as the seminar wise, the differences, there's really not too much. It's just more so user preference. Everybody's like, I can't believe how you would use the UDX over the IQ3. It's so awesome. It has a blue backlight, this, that, and the other thing. But I prefer this one, and then like we have some people commenting, it's just user preference. They're the same price. Everybody asks how much are they? These dashes are $695 for both of them. The price is exactly the same for each one, so it doesn't matter which one you choose. Same price. Which I think I just had another thing that comes up all the time about these, and I just lost it. Shoot.
Maybe we'll cover it in next week's webinar.
No. I'm trying to think what else the difference is between the two, other than tagging the text, the different backlights. Oh, that's what it was. Color. Can the backlights be changed? No, they cannot. This one is the green Indiglow color. I describe it as Indiglow, or like if you have a glow-in-the-dark watch, or you walk in and it kind of glows like a greenish color. That's what the UDX is going to be, and the IQ3 has a blue backlight. Can they be changed to red, purple, orange? No, unfortunately they cannot. It's just kind of the way that the boards were made, and the lighting is on the board. So in order for us to do that, you'd have to take it all apart and change it, and it unfortunately in a redesign would be involved, and it's not going to happen. But if you like blue, go with the IQ3. If you like Indiglow green,
greenish blue, yeah,
you can go with the UDX. So, but if you guys have any questions, right quick, we'd be happy to answer anything for you. But I don't see too many here because, like I said, it's kind of a basic deal here. Let's see. Oh, there might be a couple. Let's see. Yeah, IQ3 is smaller by a lot. I've got the drag race. Yeah, I mean it's smaller when it comes to like I said, it's 10 inches versus 7 inches. So I mean there's not a huge difference, but I mean when you have everything built into your dash, it can get a little crowded. But that's the cool thing about these. You don't have 17 different analog gauges drilling holes in everything. You just have one, and it kind of houses quite a bit of stuff. Let's see.
The connection to the Motec.
With a connection to a Motec M800, do you just require a universal EFI module? Yes, and then from there you'd have to get the adapter for the M800 for the Motec. It goes into that. The cool thing about, we have interfaces just for the Motec M800, but if you're ever going to change your ECU or anything like that, we'd recommend getting the universal one with just a little pigtail that goes to your EFI system, so that way you don't have to rewire the whole car later on. And we get a lot of people say, well, I don't need that now, and then literally a year later they say, oh, well, I switched to Megasquirt, or I switched to Haltech or whatever, and then they have to buy a whole new module, etc. So this way we've made it to where you buy the universal deal, and you buy the little pigtails. I think they're like, depending on which one it is, it's like $50 or $60. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot cheaper in the long run if you're going to be moving the stuff from car to car or anything like that. So
right, yeah. If you think there might be a possibility you're going to change ECUs, the universal CAN module works well with just about any CAN-based ECU on the market that has contacted our engineering department just to make sure that they've shared the protocol with us, because sometimes we get, as we said earlier in the webinar, people are there's new ECUs cropping up weekly, if not daily, and so it's obviously pretty tough to keep up with all the different changes. But we do our best. Our engineering team is constantly updating firmware and all that for the universal CAN modules, as well as the IQ3 display, IQ3 drag and street units, which also provide onboard support for the
right.
ECUs.
Is VNet basically just a CAN bus? Yes, it's our Racepak proprietary CAN bus is basically all it is. But that's why all of our connectors and sensors are all designed and manufactured here at Racepak, so that way it makes it easier for you guys. But essentially, yes, it's the same thing as CAN bus.
For 50 cents, do you know what VNet actually stood for?
No, I don't. That was before. I don't think I was born.
Vehicle Network. Oh look, there's our good buddy. Brad Mason, do these work on junior dragsters? Well, Brad, I believe you've tried one on the junior dragsters, and we got it to work. So yes, they do. But stay tuned. We're going to have some exciting news for junior dragsters in the upcoming months. Thanks for the teaser, Brad.
Yeah.
Your check's in the mail.
Yeah. Shouldn't you be on your way to Epping?
I was going to say, aren't we all supposed to be in Epping, New Hampshire tomorrow for the drag race?
So
He
yeah,
probably flies on private jet.
yeah, he's big time.
Yeah,
world
yeah.
champ and all.
Yeah, I'm taking Southwest.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no luck.
I'm taking the 405 home. So
All right.
so, but yeah, that's pretty much the basics for any of our display-only data log or display dashes that plug into our data loggers. Feel free to comment if you have any more questions below, even if this is off. I know a lot of guys are watching this stuff after the fact. We appreciate that. We put all this stuff on our Racepak YouTube page as well at Racepak Media. You can search that. All of our webinars are on there, along with hundreds of videos of tech tips, tricks, how to choose a data logger, all that stuff. It's all on there for you. And again, that's on YouTube at Racepak Media. You just search that, it'll go to our page, and you'll have a whole bunch of fun stuff to look at and watch. So we thank you very much, and if you have any other questions, be sure to comment below, and I can get to them as they show up as well. Next week, I think we are programming the IQ3 display only dash to a data logger. So we're going to kind of go through the programming and kind of show you when you read it in, how it shows up, and how to program a dash page. Like if you wanted your oil pressure in the bottom left corner or something like that, we're going to kind of go through all those steps and show you guys how to do it, and show you how easy it is, and to get you programmed and on the track fast and winning rounds and winning races. So thank you guys very much, and he'll see you in Epping, and
You'll see them on the 405.
I'll see you guys on the 405. Yeah. Thanks.